They seemed like bolt action shots. So I thought Kevin was shooting outgoing rounds instead of incoming rounds. That's what it sounded like to me. You didn't very often hear, we would hear AKs or PKMs, and then he comes over the radio and he says, taking fire. And so I say, what's your position? He didn't say his position. He said, taking effective fire. And I hear rounds go, got it. I'm going to take some of our guys. We're going to come up to you. No problem. What's your position? He starts reading out his position. So 10 digits. He gets through the first 5. I'm writing it down with a grease pencil on my map. The 6th thing that he reads out, I write down, I hear a gunshot, and he stops talking.
Welcome to Combat Story. I'm Ryan Fugit, and I served warzone tours as an Army attack helicopter pilot and CIA officer over a 15-year career. I'm fascinated by the experiences of the elite in combat. On this show, I interview some of the best to understand what combat felt like on their front lines. This is Combat Story. Today we hear the combat story of Rob Huberty, a longtime Navy SEAL who fought in Iraq and Afghanistan in some incredibly challenging battles. Rob lost over 30 people close to him from his time in the teams, from either combat deaths, accidents, or suicide, including the loss of his closest friend during a battle in which they were talking to each other when his friend Kevin Ebbert was killed. After service, and despite the pain and loss that Rob had endured, he fought back from depressive episodes, found psychedelics and plant-based medicines, attended one of the premier business schools in the country, and founded a company alongside his brothers, who he went to school with. The company they founded is called ZeroEyes and uses AI to proactively help mitigate mass shootings and gun violence. They are effectively developing the technologies that will prevent another Columbine or Sandy Hook, where, not coincidentally, Rob went to school. As you'll see in this interview, Rob is eager to help and bring other veterans aboard this ride with him at ZeroEyes to build new skills and help save lives. And I know you'll appreciate Rob's perspective on loss, sacrifice, and overcoming the odds as much as I did. Rob, thanks for joining and taking the time to share your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you are calling in from the ZeroEyes headquarters, if I understand. And as we were getting ready to film, there's a pretty interesting flag behind you that I was hoping you might share again for the audience.
Right. When we started this company and we were looking to hire people, one of our investors said, do you know what the job description was for the OSS? And the precursor to the CIA, and it was PhDs who could win a bar fight. And we kind of love that idea. The group of founders are not PhDs, we're MBAs, but we're MBAs who could win a war. You know, a lot of our team was, background of SEAL teams, special operations. We all went to Ivy League schools for MBAs, which is kind of stupid, but it sounds impressive. We were like the special needs kids of the program. They let us in because we had, presumably done something cool. I really loved the idea of that logo. It also is kind of like the origin of special operations community. The logo that is used is kind of a CIA logo, but it was derived by the British in about 1940. So when they were trying to fight, they wanted to include civilians, bike couriers, messengers, women, all sorts of things into an intel sharing from kind of like the French resistance. And so in it, you see an anchor, an eagle, and a machine gun, a Thompson, Tommy gun. The Navy SEAL trident is really derived from a similar thing. We have the bird. We call it our bird. When you get the trident, the Navy SEAL trident, it's the bird on your chest, but it is the same thing and kind of derived from the same way. So, great artists, good artists copy, great artists steal. So there we go.
Awesome. And yeah, just talking about the people that are at ZeroEyes, MBAs who could win a bar fight. I feel like an MBA is the new PhD. Like they just didn't have them back then.
I don't think so. MBA who could win a war. Let's take it a step up. Slightly dumber, but slightly tougher.
I like it.
Right.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you about was when you were in college, when some people are saving money to just go out and drink, you saved money for something else that I wanted to dive into here and probably explains a lot about the direction you took your life.
Right. I went to the University of Arizona, and the best drop zone in the United States is not terribly far. It's an hour north. Eloy, Arizona is a mecca for skydiving. For everybody who drives between Phoenix and Arizona, it's wasteland. The people who are professional skydivers live in trailers. And when I was in college, that was very attractive to me. I wanted adventure, so I took a student loan out, and instead of paying for school, I bought a parachute. I got my A license in, I think, 2000, and I tried to jump as much as I could. I didn't have a lot of money. I would spend time on the drop zone, and you'd see special operations people, but you'd also see professional skydivers. So my financial responsibility was maybe never been that great, and it was really bad then. So buy a parachute with a student loan.
Where did it come? Like just the adrenaline rush?
I don't really know. Maybe when I was a kid, I watched too many movies and I read too many comics with superheroes and whatever the case may be, and I believed them. And it just seemed really cool. Jumping out of a plane that seemed really fun. I also got into rock climbing. I'd go in the desert. There's Mount Lemmon was really close. So I'd got to climb all the time. I won't want to do like action adventure. I got scuba certified in Puerto Rico while I was in college, and I don't know what it was. I was drawn to that. I played with too many GI Joes as a kid and was brainwashed.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And you mentioned going to Arizona, but there was a chance you could have gone to West Point. No, what happened?
So I was a wrestler, and I wrestled in Connecticut, and I won state championships a bunch. And I thought I was going to go wrestle. I got my congressional nomination, and I got waitlisted. And I didn't really know where to go. I didn't apply to any other schools, so I went kind of towards that path, towards the military. When I was younger, I was motivated and doing those things. But my older brother went to the Army. He went to the Citadel, which is not to naysay those who went. It's a fine institution, but you pay someone to haze you, basically. And so all of his friends loved it. He loves it. It is what it is. I didn't understand that. He did a ROTC scholarship, but he was in the Army, and he's like, man, I don't know if you're going to like what's for dinner here. And this was pre 9/11. So I went to Arizona. I tried out ROTC. The instructor said you were what was called a qualified non-select. You should reapply. Like, you'll probably get in. Maybe, I don't know.
To West Point.
And as a student, I would have had to surrender the first year. And I said, you know what? No, thanks. I went on, some trips to Fort Huachuca, and they had all of the seniors were yelling at like students, freshmen. And I said, maybe this is not for me.
Where does the Navy come in then?
When I was a kid, my brothers would drown my head in the pool, and, I'm just a water person anyway. And again, read too many books and believed them. That being some of the Vietnam books about SEALs, the Dick Marcinko books, Road Warrior came out. I read that.
Those things were great.
Is that exaggerated? Is that whatever? When you're 12 years old and you read about him telling all the bosses to F themselves, and he was the shark man of the Delta, that was impressionable, right? And then I read the Tom Clancy books and Mr. Clark or whatever, Without Remorse. I read that.
Mm-hmm.
That was really cool. I watched the movies, whatever. Charlie Sheen, Michael Biehn was a fake Navy SEAL in everything he was ever in. And there was a mystique to it. And there was also the mystique of it being known to, at least to me, to be the toughest. I read all the books and I said, where do I want to go? Where's the opportunity in the SEAL teams? And it seemed magical, and I never met anybody who'd ever done that. So cool. So that's what I wanted to do. And
you mentioned your brother also was in the military. Was there a family connection to the military there, or no?
Not, my dad didn't, but both my grandfathers, they both fought in World War II. So on my father's side, he fought in like Europe, or at least he served there. And on my mother's side, he went island to island in the Pacific, and he had some harrowing stories. So when I was in the SEAL teams, my both my grandparents have passed away. I actually was the color guard at my on my father's side. I gave him the flag because he was a proud Marine. And
Wow.
then on my mother's side, I was already a SEAL before my grandfather passed away. And I remember being in the military, said, "Don't let the bastards get you down." His stories were, it was really funny. He after he got out, he had, issues with that, and probably PTSD is the truth. He had harrowing stories, and he would fall asleep all the time and probably have nightmares all the time, and never really came to terms with it, but he hated the bullshit. So more than anything, he held on to that when describing his military experiences. He's like, "Oh, this was the dumbest thing in the whole entire world. Let me tell you how stupid it was." But I still think probably held finally. And he enlisted. I have love letters that he wrote to my grandma.
That
And
is awesome. That's
I
awesome.
it's unreal. So he came home, then he, using the GI Bill, he went to NYU, and then he wore his class ring the rest of his life. He was proud of that experience. He was so proud to go to college. I mean, it was a little bit of the American dream, and I respected my grandparents, and I guess the whole family's held the military in high regard.
Yeah. Did you ever have a chance to talk to him while you were in the teams just about your experiences downrange? Did that ever come up?
So he died right before I deployed. So never the actual experiences to compare notes, but he was very proud of me. He knew what being a SEAL meant and versus, anything else.
Yeah.
Um, I
Dang.
mean, it was cool.
Yeah. And just before we jump into your actual service time, I'm curious, with a brother in the Army, how much trash talking goes on now? I mean, beyond just regular sibling rivalry.
Oh, absolutely zero. I don't think that his Army experience is the point of joy for him. I think my brother is we're very, very close. He's an FBI agent now. And
Got it.
there's not a whole lot of Army Navy stuff. We don't care about the football games. In fact, the people, and I'm sure I have plenty of respect for the service academies, but people who treated me poorly because I was enlisted, I don't root for their football teams. So either side.
So you could just write off any academy person, basically, is what you're saying.
I'm
Yeah.
friends with so many academy people. I say
No, I
that.
know.
I
I
say
know.
that in jest.
Yeah.
Kind of.
And actually, and you enlisted, right,
I did.
Rob? How could you just talk through that in your mind? Like you'd
Right.
already gone through college. What year is it? Just to get context with 9/11.
So I graduated college in 03. I had I went to Spain during I did a study abroad in Spain when September 11th happened. I think if I regret anything, I probably wish I would have dropped out then and enlisted, but I graduated. And I was trying to figure out what I wanted to be in my life. I had read the book To Kill a Mockingbird, and I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be Atticus Finch. So I enrolled in law school. And so I was trying to figure out what law school would be. And I interned at the district attorney's office in Philadelphia before I took like a gap year. I applied to the NYPD. I got hired by the NYPD, and I was enrolled in law school. And then I said, I kind of want a little bit of revenge. So I started going to these workouts at the Merchant Marine Academy with a '06 SEAL who would get you OCS orders. And I was passing the tests, and he said, "You could excel here if you were the quarterback from Yale." I said, "I'm not the quarterback from Yale."
Excel where?
Like, you could get OCS orders to buds.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're going to get in the back of the line all the people who've been training. Like,
Wow.
if you have this outrageous background, you're really, really smart and really, really athletic. And I was athletic, but I was not that. So I went to a recruiter about enlisting, and it switched to a SEAL because his wife was sick. SEALs are absolutely not recruiters anywhere in the United States, but my recruiter was a SEAL. His wife was sick, so he had to go to the hospital. So I did this in Philadelphia. And he was telling me the story, and he's like, "Oh, you want to be an officer? Very cool. Why?" "I want to lead men in combat." Rah, 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 rah. And he's just like, "Okay, I have a degree." He's just like, "I have my master's degree." So that's pretty cool. "Why do you want to be a SEAL? Do you want to shoot people in the face?" "You're damn right I want to shoot people in the face." "Can't do that as an officer." Like, what do you mean? You want to be a sniper? No sniper. You're going to be the dude with the radio in the back. And it's mostly true. I don't the same thing. Okay, I'm enlisting then. Let's go. Let's do it. And so I had my college degree. I was enrolled in law school, and I enlisted. It was great advice too. And I tell everybody, I try to convince people, maybe you don't want the thing you think you want.
I mean, I am never surprised anymore when I hear people like you tell stories about the recruiter's office. I feel like it's its own show outright. The things that go, like, that's one of the best sales pitches you could ever have. Pretty much.
I mean, when the recruit's being like, why are you here? Revenge. Oh, you've come to the right place.
Come on in. Sit down. So a lot of people will say that they want to be lawyers in life, but with this specific, like, I want to be Atticus Finch, where does that come from? Like, why, what is it about that role that excited you?
I don't know, the Christian Judeo upbringing of going to Catholic school and righting wrongs and being a force for good.
Yeah.
The hero, the person who stands up for right, the person who wears the white hat, the person who stands up for justice and honor and does the right thing even when it's difficult. An idealized version of something that almost doesn't exist, sure. And the closest thing to me is that as a superhero. In some way, Atticus Finch was a superhero who seemed more real. And then the closest thing that I could be to superhero is a barrel-chested freedom fighter, a frogman. So yeah, that's what I'm going to go do.
Okay. So, and did you wrestle at Arizona, Rob, or no?
I didn't. Arizona didn't have a team. I turned down a bunch of scholarships, and I was bitter at the world. And so I had to fill a void with skydiving, shooting, and rock climbing in my free time.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. If you can take us through, like, when you go through BUD/S, so this is post 9/11, obviously, you're probably gearing, like, just gunning to get out the door into combat. Right. How long does that take from the time you hit BUD/S until you find yourself in a unit getting ready to go downrange?
It was about 2 full years. So I did the delayed entry program because I was still messing with the idea of doing law school. So I thought I was going to do law and order. I was going to be a police officer in the day and go to law school at night and whatever, some justice on both sides. And I was looking at being an officer. So I depped in, waited, I got orders to go to OSA school first, because there was a Navy rating. You had to go and learn a job in the Navy. So I had to go do that school. So that was boot camp was 8 weeks, 3 months for this school. And then I went to BUD/S. When I went to BUD/S, they decided to not do a winter class anymore. So I had to wait at BUD/S for 6 months. So I got tortured an extra 6 months of like half days. And I took Arabic for 6 months. BUD/S 6 months. By the time that you actually get to kick out the door, BUD/S and SQT is almost 2 years. And then being a new guy, which is lower than scum, is another 2 years, really 4 years from the time you kick out the door. Depends. I mean, some people can do that faster, but that's roughly what it was for me.
Was it weighing on you being in that long pipeline?
Yeah, I think that you missed the fight, and terrible things happen. When I was in Virginia Beach at OSA school where they do it, when Red Wings happened, and you think that the battle has passed you by. And my first deployment was not as kinetic as the deployment before that I came into. And I thought I was going to get into a gunfight every single day, and that's what I wanted to do. And it wasn't that way, but it caught up in Afghanistan. And I mean, I eventually got to do a lot of the things that I thought a Navy SEAL should be doing.
Yeah.
But, you can be in the right place at the right time or the wrong place at the wrong time. And it's hard to know which one that is. A good deal isn't always a good deal, and a bad deal is not always a bad deal.
Yeah. That's so true. I think so many of us felt like, oh God, I got to go through training. I'm going to miss this. Just like how quick the Gulf War was in the 90s. Right. One of the things I did want to touch on before we get further into service for you, Rob, is ZeroEyes. And I want people to have this context as we go along. And I think it comes back to that adrenaline rush, the Atticus Finch, like the justice side of things. So I was hoping you could explain what the company is. And then if Sandy Hook comes into that at all. I know we didn't really touch on that, but I want to make sure we hit that before we move forward.
Right. So after the Navy, I went to business school and I struggled finding purpose. I had great jobs. I went to great schools and all that, but I didn't have purpose and I was really depressed. And the Parkland shooting had happened. And one of my buddies, Mike, who, when I have to answer at St. Peter's Gate, Mike Laff and I will be standing next to each other, for where we've been and what we've done. He said, I have this idea on how to stop active shooters after Parkland. We're going to use the existing camera infrastructure. And anytime somebody steps in front of a camera, we can see a gun, we can send an alert. Because in Parkland, he was on camera with his gun out for a while before he took that first shot and said, how come nobody was looking at this? So it turns out nobody looks at cameras. And so what if we made a program that could somehow detect the gun if it was exposed, and then we could send an alert and we could have stopped this whole thing? Great idea. That should exist. And it didn't. So that's what our company does. We process your existing camera. We don't install any, frame by frame. And we have an AI that says, is there a gun in this image? If there is, we can send law enforcement and prevent something. So when people offer thoughts and prayers after these terrible things occur, I find that I would rather do action. So that's what we're doing. We can't quit our jobs and put everything that we had into this. I don't have a 401k. I don't have a TSP. We didn't pay ourselves for 2 full years to do this. Now we're, 5 years into the company. There's 140 people-ish in it. And that's what we're doing. And that's how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And then to go back, why am I doing this? I grew up in a town called Monroe, Connecticut. I went to a middle school that was called Chalk Hill. Chalk Hill was renamed Sandy Hook Elementary School. So when the shooting occurred, Newtown and Monroe, are basically the same town as, they touch each other. And so I lived a lot of my life in Newtown. I was closer to that side. I'd go to the parks and stuff. We'd go grocery shopping. The stores was closer there. And so they bulldozed the entire school of Sandy Hook, but it was an identical building layout. It was built by the same floor plan and design. So once they bulldozed that for 5 years, they moved all the students into that building. It's more or less the same community. I've talked to people who lived in the town, the police officers, first responders who were there. And it turns out I went to church with a lot of the same people and those kind of things. And it was impossible. I also went to the University of Arizona, as I said, and I graduated high school in 1999 and I started college in August of 1999, roughly August, September. Columbine happened in April of 99. And turns out Columbine is pretty close, big state school. So I went to school with kids who were in the Columbine shooting, and you heard stories. They were almost a little bit celebrity-ish. And people in surrounding towns who knew where were you? Oh, I lived in this town and I knew this person or whatever it was. And it just was such a powerful thing. I've also been married. I have 4 kids, and I've been with my wife. I met her in that duration where I didn't know what I wanted to do. And we did the thing you do in the military. You get married twice, go to a courthouse, and you do the family wedding. So the courthouse that we went to was in Virginia Beach because that's where I lived. I lived about a quarter mile from that. That had a mass shooting. So who's going to do something about that? The thoughts and prayers are really nice, but let's take action.
Yeah.
ZeroEyes is going to do something about it. We're devoted to it.
It's great. Okay. So now we'll jump into your service, and then I'm going to, I've got a few more questions about ZeroEye in the back, but I wanted people to have that frame of reference is you could have come out of Wharton and gone anywhere you wanted, and you guys decided to take a hit and try this to help people. So can you take us through, give us some context, like the first time you go downrange, which SEAL team are you with? What's your role? And if you remember, first time you went outside the wire, whether it was mundane or crazy.
So the first time I went out on the wire, I was carrying a heavy gun, a Mark 46, and I was supposed to do isolation outside. And I had been well trained. I was with a really good team lead. I was so excited. And the one thing that training doesn't prepare you for are all the additional things that don't really make any sense. So I did a strike force mission in Baghdad that was really the cool, sexy mission. We thought it was going to be awesome, but it was good for different reasons that I thought. But my first interaction with an Iraqi checkpoint, the Iraqi police, are not uniformed police officers. Their checkpoints were mishmash. And I would say that I came very close to shooting everybody at an Iraqi checkpoint because they were walking with different camouflage uniforms, looking almost like one of the arcade shooters from the 90s. This is what a bad guy should look like. They had, their face was all wrapped, no uniforms, an AK-47, and something to me on one of them looked like a RPG. And it wasn't, but at first it did a trick of the eye. It was early morning. I was off safe. I was starting to pull the trigger on it. And my team lead was like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not who you think that is. And it was something very mundane, but it was a lesson. And that still would bother me. And it would be, what a horrendous thing that would be, just because I'd never seen that. I had no expectation. The way dogs would follow you, you don't train, you don't see any of those things. And now anybody has, who stepped through sewage and basically fallen in hip deep and patrolled all around, had packs of dogs following you, and people know what that is and those smells and those things. And until you get in the country, you don't.
How long did it take you? Yeah, go ahead.
First op, mundane, but it almost got real bad for, them and me.
I love that your team leader was just watching you for that first moment. It's a great leader. You mentioned that first deployment wasn't as kinetic maybe or aggressive as that team's previous deployment.
Right.
What were you expecting, and what did it end up being that first time downrange?
To a large extent, you expect the Navy. I expected to be in gunfights and hot hallways and throwing grenades up to my elbows and hand grenade pins. And it wasn't that, right? It doesn't even exist. World War II was probably not even what I expected, like storming the beaches of Normandy, in my mind, right? And we were highly effective. We were basically police, and we arrested a lot of bad guys and guys who were put to death. And there were money people, and it was very meaningful work. So I don't think I was disappointed with that, but I didn't get into a very close gunfight. I don't remember I don't even know if I pulled the trigger on the first entire deployment. Where there was a lot of close calls, but I did, but there wasn't a lot of like heavy gunfights. And the closest thing that really ever came, I was in a courtyard looking in, and we were clearing houses, and we were doing it with a ranger group. So it was both SEALs and Rangers together, and they were clearing a house and making a lot of noise as they were clearing. And I think there's gunfire going off on different floors, banging around. And I noticed a guy in a house that I was outside of, and he was a little bit of a looky-loo. He was coming out. What's going on? What's going on? And I saw him come out, and I could tell he was trying to protect his family. I could see this whole thing go on, and my shooting buddy's behind my back, and I'm seeing it play out. And he picks up a gun, the guy in the courtyard, and I knew he didn't mean me harm, and I knew he didn't see me. And my buddy starts shooting at him at the same time I said, "We're Americans." And he immediately dropped his gun at both. And it turned out he was another Iraqi police. And I was 20 feet from him. And I said that at the same time the trigger got pulled. And, he was okay. But, the guy I was with shot at him a bunch, and it is what it is. And it turns out that was the better call. It was better to have not pulled the trigger at that time. And I had like elevation. It would have been very easy and maybe technically by rules of engagement, but I could tell that wasn't the right thing to do at the time.
Mm-hmm. When you were working with Rangers, for instance, how aligned were you all going into an op like that? Like, had you trained together before? General TTPs? Is it just, hey, we got a day to get synced up and we go in?
No, we did some trips and we worked with them, but they rotate in at a different frequency. I think anybody who runs towards the sound of gunfire rather than away, that I respect, and it was good. They're different organizations with different priorities. So you don't integrate necessarily, you do tasks together. So you take this house and we'll cordon off for you, or you take that one, we take this one, whatever the case be. That's kind of how we did it. And I think alignment, whether there be the rivalries or whatever it is, that's pretty strong. So we weren't necessarily buddies and hanging out.
Yeah.
But we were professionally worked together.
Yeah, makes sense. And as you were just talking about that courtyard incident with this guy who you kind of see looking around with kids that he's trying to protect,
Right.
Did you have kids at that time for that deployment?
No, I didn't. The culmination of me getting out of the military was kids. So, but at that point I didn't.
Did you have kids when you deployed, or you're saying you didn't have them till afterwards?
Till after. My wife was
After-
pregnant. My wife was pregnant. I said, it's time to go.
I see. Okay. I'm always curious if people have gone in with and without kids and how that changes how you might operate on the battlefield. It just sounded the way you're talking about this guy, knowing you have 4 kids, like looking back, can't imagine being in his spot, and how you approach that. God. You mentioned earlier that because this first deployment wasn't as kinetic as you were hoping for, that it was a bit of a disappointment. Can you just explain a little bit more for people who are like, why would that be a disappointment if you're not getting in gunfights every day? Isn't that a good thing?
For whatever, right or wrong, it's exciting. And if things are going your way, it's even fun. Going to war with people that you think are awesome and you're trying to do it, it's fun, particularly when you're going against bad guys who are really bad and mean harm, and you think that you're going to do good in this world. Everybody's excited to do that. Anybody who would put themselves through it has already made that decision. When the time comes, I'm going to pull the trigger. This is exciting. For as silly of a thing is, if you're on a high school football team and you practice the whole time, you want to play in the big game. And I mean, that's just, I think everybody views that way. You're there to do the job, and you think that the job is going to be putting your, a hail of gunfire and running towards it, and whatever the case may be. But I think most people who do that, that's why you want to do it. You want the mission, you want the danger. I would do anything to win, to be a team member on that mission.
No, that makes total sense. And when you look at I have to imagine within the SEAL community, you could run into anybody who's a SEAL and probably have an immediate connection that very quickly you can establish, where were you at, what teams you went through, buds, whether same time or not, you went through that pain together.
Yeah, we snip each other's butts.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
You figure it out quick.
Sure.
But I guess what I was hoping that you could just shed a little more light on, when you're in a SEAL team specifically, how close are you relationship wise to those other guys in the team? How would you describe that to someone who's never been in that realm?
I mean, to me, it's an unbreakable bond at this point. The people that I knew and I loved, I still talk to everybody. And when I got out and I went to business school, I didn't have that. And there were small groups of people that I stayed with and I hung out with. And then I worked for Amazon for 2 years, and it didn't exist. And I was a shell of a person because of it. I couldn't commiserate. You would talk about things nobody would understand. And that's what led me to join a company with other veterans who would rather run towards the sound of gunfire than away from it, who have selfless service, who volunteer at a pace that doesn't make any in a selfless way, that there's flaws, but holy cow, are those people amazing. And the bond of doing things that are impossibly hard together and going through tragedies and triumphs together, it's pretty powerful. And I will be friends with my teammates the rest of my life.
How does the feeling of a startup compare to that? And I understand completely, it's not combat, but I have to imagine that tight-knit, very purpose-driven, like specific mission that you're going after has some similarities.
It does. It's different job skills completely. In a lot of ways, being in the military was straightforward, and now it's not. How do you balance a budget? How's your free cash flow statement? In the SEAL teams, running a profit and loss statement isn't a thing. I need a helicopter. Here's a helicopter. I need 10 helicopters. Here's 10 helicopters. You can't have helicopters today. Oh, come on, pretty please. Okay, you get them in a week. Oh, I can't. This is ridiculous. As opposed to, I can't afford one more computer. Can I lease it? How can I do that? But the chaos and thriving in chaos and being able to get knocked down and back up again, those kind of things do translate. And if you get the right people who are business minded and enjoy that, it's pretty powerful. And our company is very veteran focused, and we love hiring veterans and transitioning and building those things and growing them in the same way, because it mattered to us. It both, it satiates our soul a little bit of getting to work with like-minded people, people who care, people who are selfless, that I would let hard skills go that they need to learn, knowing that I can teach them, because I'm going to get kind of a more well-rounded person.
Yeah. As we now transition into this next deployment for you, Rob, this is, if I'm tracking correctly, this is Afghanistan, where it's tough.
Right.
I don't know how else to say it, and we'll dig in here. But I think part of what I wanted to get at was how close you are as a team, as a SEAL team, getting into what is a very tough deployment. And I guess I would ask, before you actually deployed and you knew where you were going, was there a sense of this could be a really bad deployment for us? This could be tough.
So Afghanistan was starting to pick up. So I think this started in 2010, the second deployment. So we had Iraq was dying down by the time that I was in Iraq, but it was still very meaningful missions. It was actually a great deployment in hindsight. It was just not, running and gunning. It was waking people up out of their beds in the middle of the night, which is sneaky and cool. This was different because we were supposed to do the village stability operation mission. We were supposed to do more of a Green Beret thing, which is not why I signed up. It's a cool mission. It's just not the thing that I wanted. I wanted more direct action and that sort of thing. And it had that component of it, but you knew that you were going to live in an austere environment. You're supposed to befriend a partner force. You're supposed to use the partner force instead of you. I didn't want to do that. They get to kick in the doors instead of me, but I'm better at kicking in doors. I should kick in all of the doors. And so you had to do a little bit of that. So we knew that we wouldn't necessarily love what that component is. And well, you're supposed to be enabling them. Like, okay, but I'm still going to kick in the doors. If there's a gunfight to be had, it's mine, baby. Instead of, letting somebody else do that. So we knew that. And then you start to know exactly where you're going to go, and you realize it was very kinetic and there was a lot of gunfights. And we did know kind of going in that there was that.
Did you have any sense that this could, like you might lose people on this particular deployment?
We're pretty arrogant, right? We're good. We're the best in the world. And at that point, the SEAL teams hadn't had that many losses, right? There were some, and we knew that, and you honor them with Viking funerals and whatever it is, but the pace of SEAL deaths to the war at that stage, it was a pretty good battle record, right? And there was basically one bad day at that point, which was Red Wings, and which was devastating, right? And then just stuff started happening more frequently, and my next two subsequent deployments, there was a lot going on.
And actually, you brought up Red Wings again. It's 5 years from when that had taken place within the SEAL teams. How do you all talk about Red Wings at that time, like 08, 09, 2010? So
I was not yet a SEAL when it happened. I was in the Navy. And so when you would come across somebody who was there or what it was, I mean, the people who've seen the most combat are held in highest regard, and I think in any military organization. At this point, whoever has high awards on their chest or whatever it is, people talk about them in hushed tones. And I think to a large degree, people who are involved in that, there's hushed tones, there's honor and respect for the sacrifice, and you want to, their legacy steadies our resolve.
Yeah. And so those were the people, whoever was around that Red Wings op kind of had that association,
a mystique. And the people who go to combat every single day and come back, you're like, that's badass, I want to do that.
Yeah. If you can, then give us an idea, where were you guys going into in Afghanistan? what was your role at this time? And then if you could take us to one of the tougher moments of that.
So I was a sniper in between my first and second deployment. I didn't get to go to any schools because where I was, new guys don't get to go to schools. You meat stick, you're an idiot. Just get in the back. It was still great, but I went in between. I went to sniper school, I went to breacher school, and I went to JTAC school. So I got some of the best quals that I could get. And so I was usually on the outside looking in sniper elements, right? And so they would go clear the village and I would be on the outside element. But we were also on a little fire base in southeast Afghanistan near the Pakistan border, Zabul province, in a little village called Nabahar. That's where we lived. And then we had a makeshift base that was HESCO barriers. So you take these fold out mesh things and you build sand walls that you live in the middle of, 100 yards big is about the whole thing. We put towers on it. So all the bad guys knew where we were at and they attacked the thing every single day.
You built that. You didn't fall in on.
So when we went there, the team before us had built the walls, but inside they had built the structures, but there was no running water. There were no toilets. It was burn bags, no hot water. There was a lot to be built. So they had a very austere thing to build the thing. Then we finally built it to where it was nice and it was good, hot running water. And they're like, guess what? You need to go live in the village now. You're like, that's a bad idea. That's less safe. We should just go out in the night and, go hunt these people down because it's not a fair fight that I want to get involved with. I want to go sneak up these people in the middle of the night and then just win. And they're just like, well, that's not the way you're going to do it. But we would be there in the daytime and they know where you are and they just shoot rockets at you. And, you're in the middle of nowhere. You'd have to contend with it. It wasn't close enough to get air support. So we started to do things to defeat that. But really the first, when we got into country, it was early September, mid-September when we got into country. So we were still kind of doing turnover with the previous team. And basically our first bigger mission, we were going to do a joint mission with our team. Our platoon or troop was split into two of these areas. So my platoon was at one, another platoon was maybe 20 miles away or something like that. And we were still doing turnover with the previous team, which was team 3. And on their first mission out, one of the helicopters crashed. So on that helicopter was one of the guys from team 3, Brendan Looney, then one of my best friends that I went through training with, Adam Smith, one of our new guys, Dennis Miranda. We had one of our officers who actually lived through it, who's the only person who lived. Then we had our TIO guy, Blake McClendon, and then, the staff of the helicopter, but I didn't personally know them. And we didn't know why it crashed. And we were supposed to be a QRF and quick reaction force. They didn't let us, but I think that my mental state of chomping at the bit for war, knowing a lot of my friends were dead, it got a lot more real at that moment of what you do and how you react. And we would only been in country for a little bit, but we're getting shot at all the time. And how do you do that? And now a lot of your friends are dead. And the answer is you get aggressive. And it was an accident. They were not shot down, but it is what it is. Yeah. We didn't know how to emotionally deal with that necessarily. I didn't know how to emotionally deal with that. And I wanted revenge, but it wasn't even the enemy who did it, but we were amped up. And you said, everybody's coming home now. Nobody else are we going to lose. And the rockets got closer and closer. People would get fragged. So a bunch of people got concussions and fragging them. That happened a couple of times. And then it was time to get diabolical. And so you would set traps for people and put sniper elements out there, and they would shoot mortars at you. You'd figure out what was the smartest way to return mortar fire. We had a mortar element in there, and there was a little bit of a rope-a-dope, and we'd sneak up on people, make sure that we aimed mortars at previous situations that they did. And we were the most attacked base, and we didn't get attacked after a certain point for the rest of the duration. It was only by getting extremely aggressive. I think in the movie Batman Begins, Alfred, which Michael Caine was telling a story about people in like the woods that were stealing from them. Like, how did you contend? He was supposed to be a case officer or something like that. He's just telling Bruce Wayne a story. He's like, how did it end? He's just like, we burned the forest down. And there was a little bit of that. How do you catch somebody? Well, burn it down and go and be aggressive, do what you can to find. And as a result, we got into gunfights all the time.
Let me ask you this, just before we dig in more here, the fact that you lose people, the first, it sounds like very early on.
2 weeks, yeah.
That's crazy. Can you just talk us through, for yourself, like you were saying, you didn't emotionally process it the right way. I don't know if there's advice you'd give yourself now, like if that happened again, if there's a right way to do it, but also just morale. Like how did the teams react beyond just the revenge side? Was it lower morale? Was it like, let's just get out there and attack? How'd you handle it?
I mean, it was attack. That there was nothing else. It's tough to even process now. What would I have done? I don't know. I'm a very different person now, and that was a chapter in my life that I think is over. I don't associate like me being a SEAL quite as much anymore. That used to be my entire identity. But I remember in the SEAL teams, we had this tradition: when you get pinned is a big deal. And they used to not, after you graduate, buds give you your pin. And then the team would give you the actual pin. You had to earn your trident. So after they developed a course that was called STT, and then it became SQT. So I graduated SQT. At the end, they pin you. So after your second school, you're a SEAL and you wear your insignia. But the team used to put it on you, back in the day. I don't know when that's stopped. Maybe it was the very early 2000s or the late 90s when you wouldn't get pinned at the school, maybe somewhere around there. And the team would do it. So the tradition was you would give your tridents back and you were not allowed to wear your trident and you'd have to earn it back. And in all the gyms and everywhere you go in the SEAL teams, it says earn your trident every day. And we would do these SEAL boards at the end, right before deployment, right before we kick off, of whether you give somebody a pin or not. And Dennis Miranda, we never pinned. And it's a regret. We felt awful about it at the time. We didn't get an opportunity to pin everybody. So like the night after it happened, we did a toast and we pinned all of our new guys. And, it's blood, you put it in the chest. But you were standing around a campfire, everybody's like crying their eyes out and we're punching tridents into the chests. And I wish I would have fucking pinned him. Yeah. I wish I would have pinned him.
Oh man. Okay. And I know this deployment doesn't seem to get any easier. So maybe you could give us some context on the commander at that time.
So that's the next one. That's the next.
Okay.
The one they're talking about is the one after.
Jeez.
Right.
So you had two of these.
Oh yeah. So that one was bad. But we came home from that and there was not really processing. There wasn't, it wasn't not in a good place. And you said, I just want to go back. I want to continue doing this. I want to go down the road. I actually tried out to go to SEAL Team 6 in between, and I didn't make it. I went to Green Team and I didn't make it through, and I was very motivated to go back. And I wanted to go back to a team. They said, go to a training detachment, do that, to train for a couple of years and you try again. Said, I'm going to go back to the team. I'm going to go to war again, then I'm going to try again. Cool. So I did my third deployment again in Afghanistan.
Okay. So, and that's the one where we have Commander Price.
Right.
And Kevin, huh?
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Question. It sounds like I know the answer to this, but since the fact that you tried out for SEAL Team 6, did you and your wife at all talk after that deployment to Afghanistan, the first one, about potentially leaving the military, or you were just like, I got to get back in this?
She met me, and when I first met her, I was actually working at a Starbucks, and she was my boss.
No way.
Yeah.
No,
she still is my boss. And when I met her, I was just saying, I'm going to go be a Navy SEAL. We can't even date. This is dumb. We shouldn't do this. This is stupid. I'm probably going to die. Like this is ridiculous. I was an idiot then, and I probably am still stupid now, but, she knew that I needed this. She knew. She never asked me to leave. She's been ride or die homie the whole time.
That's awesome.
And, going through it, would she have preferred me to stop? The answer is absolutely yes. But that was not, I had to decide for myself, and she's along for the ride.
And I would also just say thanks for sharing that you tried out and didn't make it, because I think a lot of people will see this and see you and like what you've talked about, what you've made it through. You've been a SEAL, go to Wharton, start your own company. Like you can only do things
I've sucked
that
at
result
plenty
in
of shit.
success.
I've sucked at a lot of stuff.
But it's important.
Right.
I think it's really great that
Right.
you actually mentioned that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's funny because when the nightmares began, a lot of the time the nightmares would be like in training things and not the things that actually bothered me during the day, which is really weird. Like it was such a failure in my mind that I was like, I am going to go back. There's no fucking way I'm going to go back. I'm going to do this. That's who I am. That's what I could do. I'll be a failure if I don't do this. And, I ended up getting orders to go there again. But I chose to go to school because my wife was pregnant, but
yeah, that's huge. That's interesting about the training too. I feel like there's something about the way, I don't know, the system brings us up, whether it's sports, school, the military, that even failing in training feels like you can't let it happen. But it's
and a weird thing of like every wrestling match I ever lost in high school, I know their name.
But you probably can't remember the wins.
I don't know a damn win.
Dude,
I don't know.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
I don't know one. I couldn't tell you one. I could tell you every loss and how it made me feel.
Oh man. So I think this is a good segue actually is it Job Price? Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
Job Price, because, and for people here, we'll have a link in the description to read about this SEAL officer. And obviously you'll share some more, Rob, but one of the things that really resonated with me reading his story was how much he like did not want to fail along the way. And it just came out as so pronounced with what happened. So I just wonder if you could set some context with him being, I guess, the commander going into this fight and share what this deployment was like for you.
So he was the executive officer when I was a new guy. And when I first checked in the team, being a new guy is just a chance to get hazed for 2 straight years. Being a new guy might be worse than going through training. And that, I'm not exaggerating when I say that. It's really bad. So, it's really bad. You get pretty destroyed for 4 solid years. There's not a whole lot of good days in there. So you have to make them. So the mental tenacity and, it's not even the physical tenacity. Like I'm not really that impressed. Somebody's doing ultra marathons or how many push-ups you could do in a row or whatever it is from the military, from special operations. It's the mental tenacity to be able to pursue that again and again and again, or for the guys who quit and then come back, whatever the case may be. That stuff is hard. I don't know. Being a new guy sucked, and Job was the executive officer. I used to have to stand quarterdeck watch as a SEAL. I don't know. They would make us do it. It was terrible. They'd make you put on camis and announce the announcements. And Job, hey, send this guy to the office, call him out from the microphone. And in the Navy, they call it the 1MC. I don't even remember what the acronym, what is MC? It's probably something stupid, but call him up on the intercom. And you would say what he did, and he would call you up immediately. Those aren't the words. I didn't ask him. I commanded him. Tell him I commanded him. And you couldn't do anything right. You were always on pins and needles with him. And he took his job really, really seriously, too seriously. I think I have sympathy now for him, but I hated him.
Oh, interesting.
I hated him, and so did everyone else. I know why now, but I couldn't see it then. And it's because he wanted to be the best he could be. He wanted to be perfect. He was a guy who was not going to leave his office until late in the morning on stuff that I feel is fairly inconsequential. How your PowerPoint deck looked, how this does. He was a tireless tyrant. He was like Darth Vader in the halls. I could hear him breathing, and we had a long hallway, and if you were walking towards him, I would pretend I had a folder. You'd have a folder in your hands. You'd look at it and say, I need to go that way. And that's just the reality of it. And when he became the commanding officer, it was even more pronounced. And in hindsight, why did he do that? Because he wanted to do a great job. He wanted it to be perfect. He wanted the best from us. And that's how he thought he should do it. And he was loathed.
Wow.
He did not connect with anybody. I think that he was a completely ineffective leader, but he was completely competent.
Interesting. So we'll get into what happens with him, but could you just for a moment with that juxtapose what you just described from him with like one of the best leaders that you had?
So Brian Bourgeois, who was the commanding officer of SEAL Team 8, who recently passed away. He had a fast roping accident last year. He played football at Navy. He didn't get to come in directly. He was authentically himself all the time. He owned mistakes. He would fail, but it would be okay. He would pick everybody up. He held everybody accountable, but there was just love in him. He was a joy to be around. He was one of the boys, maybe to his detriment. There was
in what way? In what way?
On my first deployment, I actually was meritoriously promoted twice in the Navy and demoted once. So we had a Christmas party. There was alcohol and that's it. Nothing really happened, but you're not supposed to drink overseas, and we got caught. We were actually turned in by the Rangers that we were with for whatever reason.
No.
They showed cups in the garbage, and they smelled them, and they smelled like alcohol. And then they asked everybody and pulled them in, did you drink? And it started out, this isn't a witch hunt. And every time that I've ever heard the words, this isn't a witch hunt, it was a witch hunt. So those are the first words of a witch hunt, that this is definitely not. But, I stood in front of a board and they said, did you drink? Yeah, I did. And I think a lot of the people lied because only 7 people got in trouble. And of the people who did get in trouble, one was Jeremy Wise, who I was friends with, and he ended up getting killed in the bombing in Coast. And I know his brother actually did your show.
Yeah.
So I met him. And Booge got in trouble, but Booge didn't get in trouble like on the spot, but basically he got sent home. And, that is a detriment to your career, right? But he was able to recover, and, he stood up with the boys, and a lot of people didn't. There were so many people there who ranked higher than him. And kindness, tenderness, joy, but he was a badass. And so he was the commanding officer of a SEAL team, and he still fast roped. And COs don't need to go fast rope with the boys, but he was the boy. And he's like, I'm going to show everybody I'm going to do that. And then they had an accident. So,
damn. Okay. Thanks for that. I know you see a lot of great leaders in the teams, and not just officers. It was just could have been anyone, but
mostly
just the way. Yeah, I know. So the way you positioned it, though, I think it is important for having 2 officers there. And actually, we also interviewed Mike Hayes, who I think may have been the commander before y'all got.
Yeah, I did turnover with him. He was really cool to me.
Yeah, he seems to be a very genuine, down to earth guy.
I sat next to him on an airplane the first time I ever met Mike Hayes. I was a new guy, and I went to a funeral. They said, who wants to go to a funeral? Wear your uniform and just support the family. So that, they invited everybody over, and it was for Mike Koch, I believe. So some of the SEAL Team 6 guys got killed subsequently, but it was like one guy here, one guy there. And I was like, I'm going to go honor him. And I sat next to Mike Hayes on a flight. And I remember 2 things that he told me on that flight. He's asking about me. You're a new guy. What's your background? And, I went to a Jesuit prep school, and I did this. And, I shared some of my story, and he said, to whom much is given, much shall be required. I agree with that. I liked him. And then we did the turnover with him. I had great interactions with him. After sitting, literally the only time I sat next to the guy on an airplane once, he said, if you want to be an officer in the teams, he's like, I'll write your package. After I got off
Jeez.
it. I don't know if he would remember that, but he told me that.
That's cool. That's really cool. All right. With this, then, knowing that you're going in with Commander Price, can you take us through one or two of the tough times during that deployment? And maybe
Right.
we start with Kevin, or maybe it's somewhere else along the way.
So there were 4 things that basically happened throughout that deployment. I was in a commando mission. And so we had 1,000 commandos, and we'd be able to go clear a whole valley. We had more of a strike force mission. So we could go fly in and go take care of business for village stability operations, these small little areas that are getting attacked. And if they're not able to kind of, protect themselves from these attacks, they would call us in or get our support for whatever reason. Go clear a whole valley over here. That would really help us. Okay, good. And Job was the commanding officer of the whole task force, right? So SOTF Southeast, and which I don't know how big that is, but it's thousands. And a couple of bad things started happening. So one was a green on blue, I think is what it's called, where Green Berets were training their partner force, and some of their partner force killed one of their support personnel of these Green Berets. And it happened to 2 guys. So 2 of the Green Beret support staff were killed on the deployment on a green on blue. So we fly there, and we're going to go clear this huge valley that they just don't have the ability to clear. And, multi-day ops, clearing hundreds, if not at least hundreds of buildings. So it's really, tedious, and, go clear it. When you go and you land and you see the looks on all of their faces, and it's just, it was like a day or 2 later, and just total depression. And these guys ran away, and dude, I'll do whatever you want. You tell us what to do, I'll do it. I'll aggressively do whatever you want. And getting the support of that, we had a lot of these missions, we had different tactical gunfights. We got into gunfights a lot, but it was more of a tactical nature. And it was a good deployment in that regard. We definitely, our team got into a lot of situations and gunfights and stuff that I thought a Navy SEAL should be doing. And then another one of the VSO sites, a SEAL got killed. And so Matt Cantor, and the follow-up that was similar. So I guess they were doing a patrol somewhere, something, nothing crazy, and probably just to go have like tea with whatever it was, they didn't think anything was going, and someone shot it, I think pretty far away. I had heard 800 yards, and somehow shooting 800 yards away, a round went between his plates and got Matt Cantor. And so you have 2 Americans got killed on a green on blue. 1 American got killed by a lucky shot, I guess. And so we flew in there, we cleared everything, we did everything you did. You go to your brothers, you look them in the face, I'm sorry, man, like, I will do anything you want. And it was a burden that Job carried heavily. And because I was in the strike force, I sat at the table with him every day. So I was junior man in the room. I was probably an E6, or I was an E6. I would sometimes sit at the table and sometimes sit just off of it. Maybe there's like 10 or 12 people in the room at a time, and I got to see it every time. I saw him interact with people. He'd sit at the head, you do this, you do this. And, he was a tyrant. People didn't want to be around him. You do this. Anytime you would do mission planning, you would just hear, you just get yelled at. It would be, every answer was wrong. He was actually nice to me because I wasn't in his chain of command, and he would never make an example. He's like, good job, get out of here. And so I knew that there was purpose in why he behaved the way, but the people who reported to him, he was a bastard to them, but he was trying to draw performance. And I can only recognize that now, but he took things very serious. And then it came up to, probably the worst day of my life was Kevin Ebbert. So before I had met Kevin, I didn't know him before the deployment. We became really close friends. We'd go on climbing trips together. And I knew him to be, everybody said he's squared away. Oh, Kevin's so squared away. And he was a corpsman, and he went to the 18 Delta school. And my friend Josh, who I was on that deployment with, did a deployment with him. And he's like, dude, I am telling you, Kevin is awesome. So I went to dinner one night with him for the first time, kind of meeting him. I went with one of my mentors who since has passed of cancer, Rob Strasburger. But I went to dinner with Rob and Kevin, and I got to know Kevin. And, I thought it was like really squared away. And I understood he had a sense of humor to it. He was like a classical guitar major, and he's just talented at everything he can do. Very serious, but very stoic. He kind of didn't say a whole lot. And I went to this dinner, and I think I said, we're talking about smoking weed. And I didn't do that growing up. And I was like, you didn't do that. He's just like, what would make you think that? I said, you're pretty squared away. He's like, I was a classic guitar major. You don't think that and in the weirdest way possible, of course I did that growing up. Like, this is insane. And it was so funny how stoic he was, how he said it. He was trying to get my reaction. This guy's hilarious. And we'd go on all these climbing trips together. And every weekend in the teams, we'd go on trips. We'd just go find stuff to climb. And that was a big part of it. And he was held in high regard in the whole team. Everybody wanted to be like Kevin because he was that. He was funny. He was so professional. He was so serious that and just a pro, just a really good person. And we went out on a mission. An example, before we went on this mission, it was very close to Thanksgiving. He had just the dumbest thing. We made turkey hands Thanksgiving designs. And we looked at the wall. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
There's one in the middle that's way better than everybody else's.
I see it.
And it was Kevin's.
That's great.
It was hilarious. You're like, which one did Kevin do? The one in the middle, of course. You don't even need to look at the name. It was perfect. It was like, it didn't make any sense how good it was. So we had this mission that was supposed to be really, really, really kinetic. And in the mission, I had a group of about 75 commandos. My buddy had a group of 100, and we had the command and control element in between. And we thought we were going to play a little terrorist rope-a-dope. We were told that this was the most kinetic place. You're going to get into gunfights every house. And, that did happen a little bit throughout the deployment, but everybody always made it seem worse than it would be. We were showing up with 200 guys. I don't know that you're really going to get a big fight with 200 guys, but it is what it is. Sometimes we did. It would be on the outskirts. We'd have to maneuver. Sometimes it was in between. They usually just didn't know how big we were if that was the case, right? As soon as they realized they were big, they would run away. Or, we would catch them, or, CAS or through that deployment. On this one, we came up with a pretty clever plan of attacking them. And so we were going to have them fly in at night, and we would put overwatch elements in mountains. So it was about 12,000 feet where they landed. The village was somewhere about 6,000, I want to say. And we were going to do the clearance at 6,000 feet, but we wanted to set the overwatch in the middle of the night so they wouldn't know we were there at all. They would know the big elements. You can't hide that. And we had heard that they would go into the mountains to run away, or down these other goat trails and stuff like that. So we thought it would be really clever putting them up close to the village, but in the mountains. So they had to down climb, mountains from like 6,000 feet to, let's say, 7,000 feet, for 12 to 7. So it was going to take them a while. So we gave them 6 hours to do it. I landed 2 hours before dawn. He landed at midnight or so. And this is a great plan. We all came up with it. We thought it was clever. We thought it was good. We thought this is going to be terrorist whack-a-mole. We're going to get them so good. And it was a little bit more complicated overall in terms of what we did. And we had about 10 days to plan it. So we took it. We were pretty proud of it. And I had a lot to do with the plan. And you know, it's upsetting because, you know, he didn't come home. And when you hold a little responsibility for that. Like I still feel that. So at some point in the night when he was down climbing, it was too treacherous. Maybe we misunderstood the terrain, but I think perhaps he went the wrong direction when it was left instead of right. I don't know. I wasn't there, but that's what was going into my mind. So when I landed 2 hours before it was going on, I was in comms with him and I was talking to him and he's like, "Hey man, I couldn't get to the spot that I was supposed to get. So we're waiting till first light. I'm at a sheer cliff. I'm looking down. There's no way. This is insanely dangerous. We're going to die if we keep walking. Like people could fall off." Makes sense. No one even knows you're there. Cool. You know, we wait. First light comes. They start kind of moving a little bit. And we're like, you know what? We're going to start clearing, even though you're not in position. Everybody else is in position. And the guys in the village start banging on doors. They're clearing the village. I'm waiting in a building outside. I have, I think maybe like 3 Green Beret with me who lived in the village who asked us to do the clearance. And then I had 3 Naval Special Warfare. So I had 2 SEALs and an EOD guy with me. So there were 4 of us, 7 Americans-ish. And they're, you know, the commandos, we weren't supposed to go in the houses. We would move to the next house after they cleared 10. We'd move to, you know, further in the village. And I heard shots in the mountains. And Kevin was a sniper, so they seemed like bolt action shots. So I thought Kevin was shooting at, you know, outgoing rounds instead of incoming rounds. That's what it sounded like to me. You didn't very often hear. We would hear AKs or PKMs, belt fed stuff, or, you know, semi-automatic guns. And so that was the assumption at first. And then he comes over the radio and he says, "Taking fire." That's weird. Okay. So he's talking to me. And so I say, "What's your position?" He didn't say his position. He said, "Taking effective fire." And I hear rounds go. "Got it. I'm going to take some of our guys. We're going to come up to you. No problem. What's your position?" He starts reading out his position. So 10 digits. He gets through the first 5. I'm writing it down with a grease pencil on my map. The 6th thing that he reads out, I write down. I hear a gunshot, and he stops talking. So what happened at that point, he got shot in the head. I didn't know that at the time. So his last words I have written down. I actually gave the map to his mom because that was his last words. So he was talking to me. I didn't realize, I didn't know it at the time what exactly occurred, but I had a good idea. And so I'm trying to talk to the element because 6 digits isn't enough to get you even really remotely close to where it is. I had an idea where he was supposed to be, but I knew he wasn't there. And so I started rounding up the guys and I started talking to them more. "Hey, where are you? Give me your position." And I think that we started going to where they were supposed to be. And we were told that all the goat trails are IED, don't go on them. But it's rocky terrain. And we were at least gaining 4,000 feet, what we're supposed to know. And I think they were supposed to be like 800 yards away is like where they were supposed to be, but they were further. So it was really cold. I had my puff jacket under my plates instead of over it because I thought I would just pull it off because it was, you know, when they were in the mountains, they started in the snow. It was cold, you know. So I'm running. I told the Green Berets that I was with that I was in charge of the commandos, but I'm going to go get my brother. Can you be in charge of the commandos? And they had done that mission set before. They were really familiar with it. Just use our interpreter. I got to go. It's my brother. I'm going. And I mean, they didn't blink for a second. They're like, "We fucking got you." Cool. So I took 2 SEALs, 1 EOD guy, and hot dead sprint to where we could go. Eventually, they started talking back to me, my guys, and they were whispering. And they're whispering over the radio, so you knew something was bad. And I didn't hear really gunfire go back. I didn't hear like some gunfight, some big gunfight. I only heard a couple of shots really. And I eventually, doing a sprint on this goat trail that's supposed to be IED'd, I was a JTAC, so I took control of air. So I'm in a dead sprint leading these guys down a goat trail thinking if an IED goes off, it'll take me, and fuck it, this is time. The idea that I had, having a lot of friends who had been killed at this point, extortion happened in between. My mentor was on that. I knew everybody on that. I was friends with them. I was only going to take risks that mattered, I had decided. I still want to go for the action. I want to be in the big game. I want to be on the big play. Put me in, coach. But I'm going to do it when it matters. I'm not going to take big risks. And when I was on my way there, I said, fuck it, I don't care. Like I'm in. If I die doing this, it's okay. I'm trying to save my friend's life. And so they say there's a golden hour. If you get to somebody who's hurt and you can get them medical attention and back where they usually save their life, if you can get the golden hour. And so as I'm trying to sprint my ass off to get there, that's all that's in my head. We're like, he has to be back in 60 minutes. And there was something pretty heartbreaking knowing that it was going to take me a long time to get there. And I didn't quite know where he was. So I came to a spot on my GPS where I thought that they were, based on them whispering their coordinates. And I saw a sheer cliff, 100 feet straight up. And I was like, fuck, I'm here, but you guys can't see me. So I told the guys, hold for me. I'm going to climb this thing. I was a big rock climber. I slung my M4 and I started going up. And I was probably like 30 feet up the wall. And the guys were like, dude, I can't follow you. And I looked and there weren't really holds. I had a bunch of weight. And I was like, I'm going to fall off this thing. So I down climbed. And I realized that I could go up a different way, but it was not as direct. We do that. Same kind of thing. I started climbing again. And the guys behind me are like, I have got an A-dub. I can't follow you up. And I really thought that I'd be able to crest and with my M4, take care of what was ever above him. I kind of believed at that point it was a sniper. We'd been talking a little bit. I thought I had the helicopters. I was ready for them to take a shot. I was going to clear them. Like I had already decided if I was really close, if I was danger close, I was just going to clear them. And I was going to key up so they couldn't. So I was just going to say cleared hot, cleared hot, cleared hot, cleared hot. And I was going to
for an airstrike on your own position. Yeah.
I didn't give a fuck.
You knew he's dead at this time, Rob?
I was pretty confident in it. So they had said bonehead, which is the wrong term. That is a training word instead of man down. And at some given point, I could hear the panic and the fear in the guys' voices and whispering. You knew they were not okay or right, and they were in like a tactically huge disadvantage based on like what they were saying. And some of the Afghanis got shot too. With like frags, so a guy was wounded, and they're dealing with a scenario that I didn't really fully understand. Eventually I climb around. I'm like going like a full circle around, going up around a mountain, and I got clear and I could see down on their position. So I ended up coming way above them. And so I could see down on them. I've got you. So I gained thousands of feet. This is probably 45 minutes later from like when I heard it. I sweat through my puff jacket all the way through it. And I was like, I have you. So I guess what happened is there was two guys in a cave that they slept at like 10,000 feet, 12,000 feet. And they had just passed them and they were within 50 yards. There was a 20-foot drop off where they were, and they were shooting down on them, so they couldn't shoot over it. And they didn't know how many of them there were. I think it turned out there were actually only two, but they didn't know that. And so they were above them for quite a while. They were whispering and like dirt was falling over them. So they knew somebody was above them for a while. I guess what ultimately happened is the guy squirted in a different direction, down a different way, and went around. We ended up getting an interpreter with a group of Afghanis who shot the guy who got him during the op. But it just where he squirted was not towards me. So we think we got him. And finally I get to them, and we had one of the helicopters, the medevacs, has a hoist on it. And they're like, we can hoist him. And the guy's in there, he's dead. There's no way that he is alive. We're not going to hoist him. And so we still think that there's a possibility that there's guys in the mountains that could have an added advantage, and having a helicopter hoist is not awesome. So I said, no, we're not hoisting. We will carry him and we'll meet you down. So we had to carry his body out of the mountain for perhaps 3 hours. We took turns. I first was Overwatch for them, so I didn't touch Kevin for a while. They had wrapped his head in gauze. Eventually, as we got closer, the Green Beret they bumped out to us so they could provide Overwatch for us. So I was Overwatch, and they had covered us in case anybody was still there. So I ended up helping physically carry Kevin, and he was my brother. And I just even wanted the opportunity to carry his body, the honor of it. And Kevin didn't wear deodorant. That was a thing. And I remember his smell. I remember his hand. I remember his wedding ring. I was friends with him. I had gone to concerts and stuff with him and his wife. It's the smell and seeing his ring struck me. I wanted to take it off to give it to her. That was a moment, but I knew that they would bring the body back and it would be faster. So I decided not to do that in the moment, but there was something really weird. And when we finally got back to where everybody else had consolidated to, that was the time everybody broke down. And that was supposed to be his last mission. He had gotten into medical school. He was an enlisted guy too. And so he was going to go be a doctor. And that hit the team pretty hard. Along with all the things that had happened at that point, Kevin was held in high regard of the team. And we had all of these bad things happen in a row, and we go back and continue mission. And, there was not really a breath to take, do more ops. So that was November 24th, 2012. And I was one of those, 12 or so people in the briefing room every day with Commander Price. And it really affected him. And I mean, I was there and it really affected me, and I was close with him and, his friends and all of those things. But Job took responsibility in his mind. So we come back and you saw him deteriorate. He lost 4 guys. Mike Hayes didn't lose anybody on the previous one. I think there was probably comparison to him. That's the standard. I need to exceed that standard. I'm going to be better than that guy. Whatever that case may be. And you saw him stop sleeping. You saw him do this. You saw him react. And he was a guy who during a meeting would say, do this, you're wrong, you need to do this. He owned every second of every meeting. You couldn't get a word in edgewise, not at all. And then he didn't talk. And then he slouched in his chair. And then he said, yeah, whatever, sounds good. And you could see it happen. And I was nobody. I was an E6. And he should have gone home. Somebody should have made him go home. Everybody knew that it was wrong. I think everybody knew suicidal. I think they knew that. So my understanding was the people who were in the room pulled him aside and said, you need to get more sleep. And they saw the bad in front of them, but it didn't work. I didn't say a word to him. I was not in that kind of relationship. In hindsight, at 41 years old now, me today, I'd go up in any motherfucker's face and be like, you need help and I will help you. But I was not in a position to do that at the time. And he committed suicide, killed himself in his room on Christmas Eve. We had a meeting in that room, in his bedroom, physically shared a wall with the briefing room. And our executive officer said he'd want us to go on as his body was physically in the room. Charlie Mike, continue mission. I'm in the room just saying, this is fucking insane. Why are we doing this? Continue mission. Maybe after a while, maybe a week, they said, no, you're shut down. And maybe it was less than that, a couple of days. But we were supposed to be locked on for missions to go out. And, they have to do, whatever it is that they do, fly them out.
Yeah.
But that was a hard pill to swallow, the whole thing. You lose a best friend, your boss kills himself. What the fuck? I don't know. So I will say that the next guy to come in was really great to us, our next commanding officer, and he helped pick up the pieces. And it wasn't by being authoritative; it was by there was a lot more compassion.
Man, how did you end up processing things for the remainder of that deployment, redeployment?
Oh, I was totally fine. I was totally fine. That's what I told the psychologist.
That's right.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Until I wasn't. So I think I could conceptually understand. I was upset. I stayed in country. One of my friends went home and, for the funerals to be with the family and stuff like that. But I stayed.
Why did you stay, Rob?
Not everybody gets to go home. Basically, only about one person, and it's just going to be somebody who's friends. And my friend Josh had done 2 deployments with him and his friends, and I had just done one. He was like, "You should be with the family." Yeah, okay, I got it here. So the rest of the deployment went the way that it did. There were ups and downs and other things that there's a bunch of stuff I can complain about, but perhaps leadership that I could complain about from that deployment. And I said that I would never make those mistakes. And I had orders after that to go to Green Team. So I got picked up again, and I had applied to business school, and I wasn't really sure which one I would do. I really wanted to go to DAMNAC and SEAL Team 6. I wanted that. I have to be a part of that. That's the place to go. That's the show. Let's go. But I got into Wharton, and my wife at the time ended up becoming pregnant, and realizing what that life is and what I had been through. I think at this point, I had a number in my head of how many friends I lost, and another guy I just went to buds with was the guy who got killed in Ukraine. So the number I think is about 32 right now of guys that I knew who are dead now. And I was looking at that. That's probably not the environment to have kids. I have a great opportunity before me. So I got out and I went to Wharton. And instead of go, now it's quiet. And while that was a great opportunity, that's where bad dreams start coming. That's where depression sets in. That's where purpose goes away. And it started there.
Who noticed it starting?
I mean, I noticed myself. I hated what I was doing. I was doing something that's awesome and I hated it. And I would commiserate with other SEALs. So there was another guy who was a SEAL Team 6 guy that I was in school that I sat next to, Sean Freitag. And I would sit next to him. We'd sit in class together, the 2 of us in the same year. And we were like, dude, what are we doing here? Why do they like these things? And I like these things. I don't know. These people are crazy. And then I had friends in the second year above me. One is our CEO, Mike Laeth, and then another guy, Chris Rushing, who were all enlisted SEALs at Wharton, 4 of us.
That's awesome.
And we'd go to the barbecue place on campus and be like, dude, I actually don't like this. I don't like it either. I don't necessarily connect with everybody here. Let's just hang out all the time. And you'd hang out with the veterans and you're like, their value systems are different than ours. You're like, yes, I know. Even some of the academy guys who were in school, they were there consulting and private, and we're just, none of this is scratching the itch for me, man. And we went through school a little bit of a zombie, and I had great things in front of me. I had kids. And at this point, at least while I was at school, my wife may have been pregnant before the second year, but I had, it was starting a family. It was good. There's a lot of good things in my life, so much promise. And I was not happy. And after I graduated school, I took a job with Amazon. And that's a great job. It was a well-paying job. It's prestigious. It was really hard to get. It was well-respected. And you're in the environment. And it was like, school was a lot of amazing people, but maybe they didn't think the same way. And that's okay. It was great. Amazon was not the same to me. And I was in a warehouse where I didn't see the sun much and delivering packages. Literally, I was running like shifts of people working. And, chasing productivity goals did not scratch the itch. And it was, there's high expectations of that the winning at that, you just come the next day and like, try to beat your record of yesterday, be 10% better. You'll never get a thumbs up. And there's no purpose. And it was, the demons come out when it gets quiet. Not when you're hard charging. I don't know how many guys who are really in the teams who are chasing ghosts, but afterwards, I think people chase ghosts. And having seen that happen in front of me, and now at this point have had a lot of friends who've also killed themselves. We got to take care of each other. Like, you have to see it. It's really helpful to hang out with old friends. And maybe it's really helpful to start a company with them too. Maybe that's a better way.
Man, the way you're describing that, I can feel it. I know a lot of people will resonate with them. I think similar experiences of just not feeling like you fit in, and when it's quiet, things get bad. I say this to my wife all the time. The people who are still in probably are packing stuff away that's going to come out later, and you just want to be there for them when it does. Yeah. It's tough. So the one other thing I wanted to touch on, obviously with ZeroEyes, there's a couple things, but mindful of your time here, Rob, you had mentioned psychedelics as we were preparing for this.
Yeah.
I've talked to a few folks who have gotten into that. I am actually really interested myself. And I was just wondering, like, your experience, was it a positive one? Would you recommend that to other people? What did it do for you?
So I have, and I will, and I'm going to right now. And I wrote it down, and it should be embarrassing to talk about, but I'm going to talk about it because it was life-changing. So I want to have the humility. I've done things and been successful at a very high level, and you make a lot of money and you have a job that has the right title. And every time you reach for a brass ring, it disappears in your hand. I want to be a Navy SEAL. Not as cool as I thought. I want to be a SEAL Team 6. And I didn't make it there, but a lot of my friends who are there is like, it's more or less the same. Maybe it's more, but I wasn't that happy. Okay, let's go to the business school, the best business school that I could get into. It was fine. I'm going to go for the job. Amazon's so cool. They're so innovative. It's so cool. Every day is day one. Disappeared in your head. You could chase that stuff and you'll never get it. And I had literally watched a podcast with a guy, Jeff Boss, and he had talked about similar kind of things. And he had talked about this experience that he had in Mexico doing psychedelics. And I was at a point in my life where I needed to hear that to go do something. And I had to do something for myself. And, some of my exercise stuff went down. I meditate now, I exercise, I try to do stuff in the morning. But when you're working 70 to 100-hour weeks, it's really tough to do any of that. So you don't, and you're trying to chase something. You're always trying to chase something, and it's not happy, and it's not filling you. It's not filling your bucket. And I realized that and was able to identify it. And I saw people who woke up totally different people after it. Basket cases of people that I said, that person's never going to be right again. And they were happy. All right, I'll do this. Up to that point in my life, I was a pretty straight edge person for the most of my life. I drank a little bit, but I was not really a drinker. I had never done any drugs of any kind. Never smoked marijuana, never did anything really. Not any illegal drugs. I mean, I guess, whatever prescribed drugs, and that's it. Never abusive pain medic. I'm not interested in that. That was not who I was. So that was pretty far reach. So I read a book by Michael Pollan, who is a highly respected, really food critic. He wrote The Omnivore's Dilemma, but he's a food guy, and he writes that, and he's an intellectual, and he said he wrote a book called How to Change Your Mind, and I read that in the midst of that, and these aren't as bad as you think. In fact, they're amazing. And so a lot of the times SEALs are high risk individuals, and they'll chase things that I don't know that if you should chase. They'll do the most extreme version of something. So I don't necessarily follow every SEAL the direction they go, because they're so extreme. And that seemed that way. And I read the book by Michael Pollan and said, this is worth an opportunity. And there was a program that I went to in Mexico where I did 2 drugs. I did plant medicine. I did ibogaine and 5-MeO DMT. And everybody has different reactions to it. But the first thing that they make you do is they make you talk to basically a therapist for weeks before you go. And they decide whether it's safe for you to go. Because there's a few reasons that it may affect your health. And a lot of it is if you have drug history, current drug history. So they have you fast when you go in, and they do it over a weekend. And so you have people that you talk out of like the things that are bothering you, and then they kind of do ceremonies for it. And the ibogaine, a lot of people describe it as defragging your hard drive and being able to live through moments dispassionately. So if there's a moment in your life that you wake up and you see a face that you always see, you wake up and you're in a moment, you're in that battle again, you're in whatever, you're doing house runs that you're failing at for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't know anybody else says that. Do you have house run dreams where you don't do the right thing, or your gun doesn't have bullets, or oh, okay. I had those, or do still, or see faces.
Yep.
I've seen again and again. And you're able to live those moments again dispassionately, and you can come to terms of why you made decisions and not hate yourself anymore. And it's like going to 20 years of therapy in a moment. And what was weird for me, so I would say you're asleep. They actually hook you up to an EKG machine, and they have a medical personnel in the room just so that you're safe. And they have, medicine that they can give you if need be. It's under a lot of scrutiny. There's more than like a 2-to-1 ratio for each person going through it. So I did it with 2 other people. There were 3 of us, and I think there was 6 or 8 of them total. They would rotate. You sit in a bed, and you have a blindfold on. I would say that you start with visions on the back of your eyelids, and you can control it a little bit. So if you want to see a moment in life, you can. And if you get too freaked out, you can sit up in your bed and you can kind of stop doing it, take a deep breath, and breathe through it. And for me, it wasn't actually that powerful of an experience, and it was short. A lot of people, it's like 18 hours. For me, it was like 4. But when I was up the next day, the most powerful thing happened. The voice inside of my head that said I suck all the time went away, and I felt silence, and it was powerful. The silence, I didn't even understand that there was silence. There was a deafening voice in my head that told me I suck, and it overpowered everything. But when that went away, it was profound. It's back years later. So this is like 5 years ago when I did this, but I can hear it now, and I can identify it. And I said, that's self-destructive. I shouldn't do that anymore. Then they had you take a day off, and then we did 5-MeO DMT. And that is like you almost don't exist. I think that perhaps I jokingly say, I think I know the meaning of life, and I think I know what happens when you die. And words don't do it justice. I'll say stuff, it'll sound silly, but most everybody, when they wake up from that, and it's like a 30-minute experience, it is Colorado river toad venom that you smoke. I've never even smoked a cigarette, and I did this. So I was afraid. I was afraid of it. I was legitimately afraid. They have 6 people in the room while you do it, each person. They put you on like a clean bed. I sat up and I was looking at the Pacific Ocean. You smoke the thing, and you take a gigantic inhale, and when you exhale, you cease to exist. It's probably the best way I could describe it.
I love it.
And then you're at one with the cosmos, or whatever you want to say. A lot of people experience being reborn. I had experiences of suicidal ideations that repeated themselves again and again and again, of like me killing myself with the cig that I own, and cheating on my wife, and waking up and seeing like my daughters die in my arms again and again and again, and killing myself again and again.
Wow.
Where it was the darkest, worst thing that I've ever seen. And then I woke up, and then I saw that like love conquered it, and it got better and better and better and better and better and better. And then I saw like being combined with everybody in the universe, and I saw my kids' eyes in mine, and I saw like my family in that, and then I saw strangers as also being my family and my children, and I saw everybody was combined and we're unified. And then you're like, fuck, we're unified, we're all the same. Why do we hate each other? Why am I jealous of someone else? I'm kind of that person. And then you see a bigger thing, and you become part of one thing. And the only word that I can describe all that oneness and existence was love. It wasn't God, it was just love. And I think that I had to walk away from it and realize that they say God is love, and that's what it is. And maybe that's God. And that means that you're part of it and I'm a part of it. We all get to be a part of it. Now, does this whole thing start again or whatever? I don't know. And maybe it's just something silly, and that's my takeaway. But it's so powerful when people see it. They say, almost everybody who wakes up, I know hundreds of people who've done it at this point. We're all connected, and they just say love.
Yeah. Did you see Kevin in that?
Not specifically, no. But I mean, I can feel him.
Yeah.
Man.
I just, this interview will come out. I just interviewed a guy named Matt Wiz Buckley, who's a former FA-18 pilot, but ended up making a lot of money, went to South America with Marcus Luttrell, actually, and did exactly what you did. Abogaine and DMT, or I don't even know, 5-MeO.
5-MeO, which is different. Yeah.
Okay. So, but he was saying those are kind of like the next level. Like you don't give it to the beginners.
They say that's the Mount Everest.
Yeah.
They say that's
so,
what's my favorite reference, man?
I know. Yeah. So I'm not surprised. You're like, all right, just let's go for that one.
Let's go.
But he did say, like, he thinks it's his travesty that he'll spend $5,000 to $8,000 to send veterans down to South America. Like, how can we not do this for vets here in the States? So he's working on that.
There's a guy named Marcus Capone, who's also a SEAL Team 6 guy, who that's all he's doing. He does a program called Vets. All the people who do this are trying to do it. It's so powerfully positive. I think everybody has a good experience at the end. I just told you, like, hell on earth for me, and it felt like a billion years too, by the way. And I saw that, and I saw that like love conquers that.
Yeah.
Maybe that sounds lame when you say those words aloud, but I felt it.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I still wake up with negative talk and self-doubt and all that all the time. I fight through it, but it still exists. So it came back, but I had that moment where I know what it did for me.
That's awesome. And I've heard several guys say exactly what you're saying, like battle-hardened folks who are like, doesn't that sound weird that I say that? But they say it with a lot of conviction. So I'm going to get you out of here. 2 things. One is with ZeroEyes. Have you guys had some big win that you think back on over the past 5 years that you're really proud you've done this? So
we have yet to capture the shooter that we think we've caught. We actually see thousands of guns, which has shocked me. We've been in a lot of different situations. I am absolutely confident that we'll capture guns. So last night I was literally walking in the streets of Philly in the subway under City Hall with the police. We have a process with like a pilot with SEPTA, which is the transit. So I was walking around with fake guns in the subway, getting detections on all these cameras because we're going to start doing stuff in Philly. Philly has, some problems. and I get to try to solve a really hard problem. And I'm pretty confident that it's going to work if we're on enough cameras in the right places. We're going to help. We're going to catch somebody. We're going to do good. We're going to save somebody's life. I'm confident in it. We just need to be on more cameras. I get to hire veterans and I get to give people purpose, and that matters. And I get to do it with friends. Fuck friends, brothers. I get to do it with brothers. I get to provide meaningful work for people. I have all levels of jobs. I have IT, beginning monitoring jobs that I put junior veterans who are like E4s and got out, in 3 or 4 years. I get to train them IT. I get to lift them and maybe train them in AI. I get to do something that matters. I get to talk to interesting people. I get to pursue something that matters to me because of a problem that makes me angry. I'm going to try to help. I know that my solution is not the only solution. It is a small step, but instead of offering thoughts and prayers, I get to do something about it. I get to work hard every day in the pursuit of something, and I get to bring people on the mission, and I get to lift people up, and I get to tell veterans a different way, and I get to help veterans go through the process. I would not be going on a show and being this open and telling you this stuff if I didn't think that veterans were hearing it who it could help. I want to share that experience that I have, and I want to make their lives better. ZeroEyes is the culmination of doing that. I couldn't be any prouder. I'm on a mission, and if I fail, at least I failed daring greatly.
Love it. I love it. All right. 2 questions I ask everybody, and then we'll wrap this up. The first is there anything you carried with you into combat that had sentimental value, something you just wanted to have on you because someone gave it to you? For those who are listening and can't see, Rob is digging into a backpack. He gave me the, hold on a second.
I have a patch in here. Give me a second.
Awesome.
Oh my goodness. My bag is a mess. Let's see if I can actually show it. I'll be embarrassed if I moved it from my bag. I know it's in here. So I have Kevin Ebbert's patch that he wore on him that I carry with me every day. Every day I carry it with me. It's stuck in here so bad I got it.
10-1. That's great.
Lima 1. Kevin Ebbert. I love you, you motherfucker. That was his patch I was on him when it was filled.
Love it. And then just the last question I ask everybody, Rob, especially just talking about losing 30 plus people that you knew along the way, all the time you spent away from home and near-death experiences, would you go back and do it all again?
I received more than I gave, yes.
Well, thanks for the time. I'm sorry I took you longer here, but I really do appreciate it. I'm absolutely confident that this has reached a lot of people and it's going to help them. So thanks.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that combat story. Here are a couple listener comments that we received. The first is a YouTube comment on the Mike Sorelli interview from BC24. It says, man, you get the most interesting guests on your show, and the interview style and questions you ask are second to none. Really appreciate the quality time you put in and how entertaining, educational, and helpful it is for both the guest, you, and the listener. And I just really wanted to read this one because I do get a ton out of this. Even this interview with Rob today just reinforces some of my hopes that one day I too will kind of follow in that direction he went with the plant-based medicine, see what that does, and maybe bring that to some more people. And I'm assuming somebody who has listened to this has taken advantage of that from some of the guests who have talked about it. And Mike Sorelli is just a badass, so a lot to learn from him too. It's a great comment. The next comment is on the Patrick Kinsella interview, and it's from Unknown Kiwi. It says, fantastic content as always. I always love listening to these while I'm at work. You really make the working day worth it. Keep up the great work. I thought that one was great. The fact that people would be listening to this during the workday, I just think is great. I do love the fact that you can kind of disconnect when listening to this, and hopefully, while you're at work getting through that day, this makes it just a little bit easier on you and the people around you. So thank you for sharing that. Hope you appreciated this one also, and you all stay safe.